Well, hello everyone. Today we have with us Dr. Neha Khanna. Thank you so much, Dr. Khanna, for joining us for a fun conversation. So, my first question for you is tell us a little bit about yourself, including a fun fact that maybe very few people know of.
Okay, thank you first of all for inviting me to this conversation. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to engage with you and anyone else who's coming to this conversation. I grew up in New Delhi, India, daughter of a military officer and a school teacher. I was always told I could do whatever I wanted to, and that has been something that has been a foundation of my life. Um, Education was always important in my family, and so, like all nerdy kids, all I did in my childhood was read books and study and more books. I think the funnest fact of my life might be that I didn't want to be an economist. I wanted to be an architect. I studied to be an architect. I went to architecture school for a short while in Delhi, and then I dropped out and did a U-turn and decided to become an economist. But I've always been interested in the built environment, so I sort of use that as my excuse to link the two things.
Um, I didn't want to be an economist either. And the only reason I became one is because the year I went into my undergraduate program, I believe Amartya Sen, who is Bengali like me, got the Nobel Prize in economics. And my parents
Oh,
said,
public good.
yes, my parents said, off you go. And I was very, very grateful for the math that I had in my 11th and 12th grade because without that, I couldn't have gone into economics. So, yeah, all kinds of ways in which we find our profession, right?
That's right.
Exactly. So, what sparked your interest in environmental economics? Was there a particular moment, a person, or experience that got you started in the field? You've already talked about the built environment. So, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you're right. So I think buildings and the built environment and the human interaction with the built environment is just been something, maybe because I was an urban child, is something that was always very front and center in my mind. But I think two things really pushed me over into environmental economics as a career choice, and more than that, I'll say a lifetime passion. The first is growing up in New Delhi, especially in the 70s and 80s, the air quality had deteriorated quite a bit. There was a coal-fired power plant literally in the heart of the city. We used to get soot and fly ash, um, coming in almost every day. And you could, if you went out with a white shirt, by the end of the day, it would be gray. So that was always, in a way, you just could not escape that. And I think the second, which is a far more random event, I would say, that pushed me over was I was doing my master's in the Delhi School of Economics, and like everybody in between classes, just hanging out, drinking coffee. And a friend of mine at the time asked me, and I don't remember what inspired his question, but he asked me if I knew how much water I used every time I pulled the flush. Uh, and honestly, I had no clue. I don't even think I was consciously aware that I was using a natural resource, if or something as basic as a daily, bodily function. And I think that was like a snap for me. So I had no idea how reliant I was on the natural resources, on again urban infrastructure, built environment, but also the natural environment. And it just was a wake-up call. And then after that, there was no turning back. And I got extraordinarily lucky. I got a job in an energy and environmental think tank immediately afterwards, and that set me on the path that I'm on today.
That's awesome. You talk about air pollution and your clothes getting dirty at the end of the day. That just reminded me of a product that we used in India, which is Robin Liquid Blue. I have, the blue dye that my mother always used it to clean white clothes. And yeah,
Yes,
I'm making that connection
I think
at
it's
this.
still available. I won't be surprised if it's still available.
Yes, absolutely. Independent of the all the regulations that exist at this point of time in India to combat air pollution. So my next question for you is that, can you tell our audience, and you've touched a little bit on this, about your professional trajectory? What roles have you had and the type of work you've done? And, what have you learned from this journey?
Well, I think, wow, that's actually a really big question. The simple answer is once an academic, always an academic. So that's sort of the short and dirty answer. I think the most non-academic role that I've played has been working as an environmental consultant in New Delhi, and sort of really understanding applied economics and understanding the importance of interdisciplinary work. I was one of, I think, three economists in a place that had maybe 200 engineers and scientists. So I was constantly having to engage with people, but also just understanding the physics of everything. So I think that was a very enlightening moment in my life that sort of helped me make the kind of choice that I made about doing work that is both economically sound, but
Mhm.
also engaged with the physical environment. And I think once I finished my graduate school work, I literally just jumped straight headfirst into economics and into an academic life. And I've stayed there. So really the roles, in terms of roles, it's really been academic research and teaching and an academic life all throughout. And I have loved every minute of it.
Fabulous, fabulous. Can you tell our audience about a fun project that you are currently working on or just done working on, and something surprising or unexpected that you have learned from it?
Well, I think I can answer that two different ways. There's one that's maybe recently completed and one that is just starting, so I have no results, but they're both fun and exciting. I
Yes,
think the
yes.
reason the recently completed one was something I wanted to work on right when I first got into graduate school, but it was not considered for the longest time serious economics. So I had to sort of put it on the back burner, and I finally got the chance and maybe the self-confidence to say, no, this is important and I want to work on it. And that is really understanding why environmental economists in particular have failed to answer the environmental justice questions, in the sense that, yes, we always have some sort of regression, some sort of thing, and then there's a coefficient, and we say, well, that's significant, so this must be some form of injustice. But we have never really answered that. Like, we can't really capture that. We have no metrics for it. And so I'm really that the project that I'm starting on now is trying to understand how economists can actually make a real contribution to this very important question of social and environmental justice. And the thing that I have learned is that it is way more complicated than I think I had ever imagined. It's going to depend on the particular pollutant, the particular community, how we measure. There's going to be a lot of issues in measurement error, in models. And so I think this is going to be a really big project. I have just the first step. And I said the first thing I've learned is that know your pollutant before you even start to make um, investigations into why some people are more exposed or living in areas that are more dirty or less dirty than others, and know something about their communities and the social dynamics within those communities, things that economists typically don't really get into. And going forward, I think I'm also very interested in understanding, again, through the lens of social justice, but also through, I think, the importance of epidemiology, what I call sort of the last frontier of the Clean Air Act, which is noise pollution. It is covered under the Clean Air Act, but it is not something that is really strictly regulated. It's mostly been, relegated to the states, and states don't really regulate it because it's a very localized, almost neighborhood kind of pollutant, as a result of which it's sort of just been ignored. And so I'm starting to work on that and understanding the human health impacts of exposure to traffic noise,
Mhm.
and then who is exposed, and that's where the social justice, like who's more exposed, who's suffering the more than others, and then what are the policy responses, and what can we do about this?
I
So I
find it fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I wanted our audience to know that personally, I am not very familiar with the environmental justice literature. So I really appreciated Neha's your slide at the Midwest Economic Association meeting presentation, where your first slide was about the different types of different dimensions of environmental justice and how we as economists can address that. And yeah, the part that you said about, knowing your pollutant, I would never have started there. And I wonder how many of our audience would start there as well. So thank you so much for
Yeah,
sharing
and
that.
just on that justice issue, I mean, going back to something I said, it was something I was interested even in graduate school. I mean, our idea of justice is so, I mean, narrow is actually a very generous interpretation.
Mhm.
Philosophers have, entire fields of study on the notion of justice. So when I was in graduate school, I took my alma mater, Cornell, had a very, what I now look back and think of as a very wise policy for graduate students, which is you had to have a minor outside of your field. So
Uh-huh.
my minor was political philosophy, and I had the joy of reading with a philosopher for about a whole year. And so I think I'm now digging deep into my soul as I'm starting into this project and going back to things that I learned, but really never did anything with in an academically serious way.
I appreciate you saying that because all of us have projects that and things, we are in a thinking profession. So ideas come, ideas go, and it's very nice to see that, you had an idea and now you have tried, you've philosophically speaking, manifested it, if I
Yes.
can say so. Awesome. Great, great. My next question for you is that, we all have areas we are working to improve. So could you share one of your weaknesses that you're actively addressing or want to address?
Oh, wow. I think this one is going to be maybe kind of not as surprising, but I have to work on the imposter syndrome. It doesn't matter how many years. I think our field, in a way, academics, not economics, but academics as a profession, it's built on, always, hey, this is not good enough. You can do better because you get a reviewer, even a good reviewer, one, that leads to a publication, a review. There's always something that says, well, this was not good enough. You need to do better, right? And if you're
Mhm.
lucky, the person might tell you or give you ideas how to do better. So I think that is always very hard on one's self-confidence, and you always feel I'm never going to be good enough. So I think I really need to work on my own self-confidence and understand that that is just part of our field, and it's not about me necessarily or my skills or the questions that I'm asking. And then I also need to be less shy. This is a very big deal for me that I'm sitting in front of you and actually chatting with you. I tend to be that person who'll stand in the corner of the room and look at my toes and hope that nobody notices me. And I've been really working on just saying hello to people.
I would have never guessed that about you. I can tell you that. Because we had really great conversations when we met this year in Kansas City at the conference. So you're doing great. You've already addressed that weakness.
Well, it's a work in progress. It takes a lot of work, and just I have to remind myself that, no one's going to bite your head off if you go and say hello.
Sure, sure. And I think that, you bring up a very, very important point about imposter syndrome. And thank you for, verbalizing that because I feel that lots of early career researchers, graduate students, they feel that they are the only ones feeling that.
Yeah.
And it's important for them to know that this is there at all levels of our profession. So that is great. Then, is there, my next question is there like a new activity that you would like to pursue in your career in the future? You've already talked about this big project, but is there anything else?
Yes, actually, there is, and it's related to that project. I am I am very seriously interested in the interaction, so sort of cross-disciplinary interactions of economics and other disciplines.
Mhm.
Uh, we tend to do a lot of interaction with the physical sciences. So, we understand the engineering sometimes, a little bit of, if you're working on water, you tend to understand the hydrology or the geology. And that's awesome. I'm glad because that's, if you don't get the physics right, you're not going to get the policy right. But at the same time, I think where economics hasn't done a lot is interacting with the social sciences. and understanding how social scientists might look at the same other social scientists might look at the same
Mhm.
problems that we're trying to address. And so I think an exciting thing, or sort of one of my dreams, I would say, it's still in the dream phase because I haven't done too much about it, is to start recording oral histories
Oh,
of
great.
people, especially in my case, people who here in the United States who were maybe a very big part of the environmental justice movement. That generation of people is aging out. And as they age out, their stories are being lost.
Mhm.
And there are two parts to this. One is just an archive of that history. It could be a gift that we could give back to the families, to the communities, make it available publicly, have their voices recorded, have their experiences recorded. So that's a public gift to the people and their families and their communities who really made a difference in the US environmental movement, environmental policies landscape. And then the second part of that, from a purely academic perspective, is those oral histories tell us a lot. And we don't, as economists, we usually don't understand how to deal with qualitative data. There are
Absolutely.
economists who are working on it, and I would love to engage with them and to see, what do they get out of those stories? If I'm working on let's say, a residential sorting model, is my model, which is usually driven by strong economic intuition, how well does that benchmark against what people are telling me in their stories?
That's right.
Is
Mhm.
it, are we missing something, or is it good? I mean, obviously we're benchmarking to economic intuition and data, quantitative data, which is great. And I'm not in any way discounting that. This is just another layer that I would like to add because I think I do believe that a sociologist or a political scientist would get something very different out of that than what we would. And I'd love for the economists to engage, I think, in that space as well to see how, and I think that's going to also help us engage interdisciplinary with other social scientists.
I love that you say that, and I really hope that you're able to realize that this dream project of yours. I have always felt very excited about combining qualitative and quantitative information to get an idea about the research setting that I am in. In fact, in my own work, I have had the fortune to work with human dimensions researchers in the environmental contexts, where we have done interviews with ranchers, and the wealth of information that is there in those interviews is sometimes I feel that surveys just don't get to that.
Exactly.
And I feel that economics as a field, that's a missed opportunity that we should capitalize on.
Yes.
I'm really excited to hear that, and I really wish you all the best with being able to operationalize this project of yours. Great, great. So then this dovetails very nicely into my next question: is that looking ahead,
Mhm.
what do you think are some of the most exciting developments we can expect in environmental economics over the next 10-15 years? So this is this is an opportunity for you to set the research agenda for all those young, early career researchers coming up through the ranks.
Well, like I said, I think some of the most exciting and uncharted territory for us is really reaching across the aisle of the social scientists, the sociologist, the political scientist, the cultural anthropologist. Because if we are building residential sorting models or firm location models or policy and policy impacts on communities, we're not getting the whole dynamic at all. So I
Mhm.
think that's something we are ready for that. I hope that we move in that direction. At the same time, I think we do need better data. Let me give you a small example. And not to say that we don't have good data. We have amazing data right now, especially with satellite products and all kinds of monitoring, and we have reanalysis data. I mean, just in the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years, the data quality and quantity that we have has grown tremendously. But when I say better data, for example, if you think about exposure, we typically measure human exposure by outdoor exposure.
Mhm.
Most of the time, we're indoors. How many hours a day are we outdoors? We're really indoors, and we have no really good measures of
Mhm.
indoor air quality or indoor. Well, I say air quality because that's what I study.
Right,
And
right.
I know there are projects where people have given handheld monitors in schools and maybe in a few homes or factories. But there's a big difference between indoor air quality and outdoor air quality, and especially as we improve energy efficiency of homes, and our homes are getting sealed really tight. So every time you use, I don't know, any kind of cleaning product, and they have all those chemicals, they're staying and they're getting embedded in those carpets and those sofas. And, even carpets and sofas have fire retardants in them. Like all of that stuff that we're breathing in all the time, that's very different from what we're measuring outside. Um, so I think that could be a really exciting development if we could somehow, we all have carbon dioxide, or carbon monoxide monitors, at least here in New York State. If I use a perfume near my carbon monoxide monitor, it starts yelling, carbon monoxide, carbon monoxide. So we have the technology. So I think if we could somehow harness that to start getting better data, it might be
Mhm.
really interesting. Um,
Excellent.
and then
Fascinating.
with that, of course, computational techniques. I mean, I don't want to underplay that. We are a quantitative social scientist, social science, better techniques. And again, we've improved leaps and bounds in the last less than a decade. It's just the 5 years I think about staggered diff and diff. And every time you turn around, there seems to be a new paper or, on it and a new technique. So it's a path we're already on. And I'm excited to see how we learn to handle the new kinds of data that we're getting now and how much more we can learn from that.
This is very, very exciting, especially for, people who are, going through their coursework, taking their econometrics classes, statistical classes, so on and so forth. So great. Now, moving, next question is about looking back. What do
Yes.
you think, are something that you wish someone had told you that, now and if you could, you'd go back to your earlier self and share.
Well, my deep dark secret. I think I wish somebody had told me early on two things. One, that at least in the beginning of my career, I was going to be one of the few women in the field. I walked into a faculty where I would be the only woman at the faculty meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And the meetings would start with gentlemen. And I'd have to raise my hand and say, "Excuse me, there's somebody else here." That thankfully has changed and is changing. But I think, there are so many different, the gender spectrum, the sexual orientation spectrum is so wide that there is still so much scope to feel out of space and out of place in our settings. So I think I wish, people walk into our life, into our academic life, a little more aware of, how you could be essentially very alone. And you could be very, very, with the majority in terms of your orientation or your identity, but it is still a lonely life, a researcher's life. So fundamentally, I think I'm saying two things. One is be aware that you may feel socially isolated, but more importantly, that in general, it's a lonely life. It's a life of somebody who's introverted. And I think, and that's why a lot of us self-select into academics. That's kind of our happy place. But even an introvert needs social engagement, and even an introvert needs friends and to feel like they belong. And I think a life in academics, I often say, I have to sit at my desk and look at my computer and suddenly write a paper and by myself or with a collaborator. So it's a very different life than outside. So it can be very lonely. I think if you walk into that aware, you're better equipped to handle it.
I think that's great. Yes. Yeah, that's a great point. And I remember somebody in graduate school, somebody telling me this, a friend, that academics is very, very lonely. And I wasn't prepared to handle that. And I wish I was, because it would have allowed me to be in a better mental headspace when I was finishing my PhD and doing my postdoc. And I think what you're saying, if I might add to that, look for building a network. Know that you can be lonely, and that's why build a network so that that loneliness can be managed.
Exactly. And it can be loneliness in the type of research question that you're asking.
Mhm.
Maybe, nobody around you is asking that question and you have to look, away from your local university. And so it's loneliness in many different dimensions, not just around gender or identity. It's loneliness in terms of research questions. It's loneliness in terms of your techniques.
That's
It's
right.
so you really, and you're absolutely right. You have to create and build your own network, and sometimes that network can be even outside of economics. It's just another person who's willing to listen to your research and just engage with you in an intellectually stimulating way. And that's all you need.
That's right. And a lot of good science comes out of those kinds of conversations for sure, I bet.
That's right.
Right, right. So then, along this same vein, what guidance do you have for early career scholars? Any secret sauce to being successful? So I'm really probing you and, the kind of guidance that you can offer because you've said such great things.
Well, I'm going to I'm going to quote Lin-Manuel Miranda here from his In the Heights. There is a character, the grandmother, who, when Usnavi is the main character, is getting impatient and is getting despondent. She looks at him, and in Spanish, there's a whole song around it that says "Paciencia y fe," have patience and faith. So I think that is the ultimate advice I have for anyone, especially young career junior scholars. There's a lot of pressure. I think there's a lot more pressure today than there was when I was in their shoes. Job market is hard. Publishing in top journals has become exceedingly hard.
Hmm.
Uh, and so you have to have faith in yourself and you have to be patient. You have to keep producing good and then each time better quality work. And I think eventually you will get the breakthrough and you will build a body of work that really speaks for itself. It's not one paper or, the top paper. It's really the whole body of work. And that's a long and slow process.
That's right. That's right. I wish somebody had told me that this is a very long process and it's not that one paper or that one project but it's the full body of work. So that's great. So my last question for you is that are you open to being approached by other researchers who want to collaborate with you or interact with you? And if yes, what's the best way to do that? Should they just walk up to you at a conference and say, I saw your interview?
Yes, first of all, yes, I am very open to scholars from all fields, from all stages of the career. I think I enjoy interacting. I'm a very collaborative researcher. Maybe that was my way of, I think, dealing with the loneliness that I mentioned earlier on. So most of my projects are, I'd say almost all of my projects are collaborative. So yes, definitely would like to engage. And the easiest way, yes, an in-person I wouldn't be here if you hadn't sat at my table and started chatting with me. So yes, I'm very open to people approaching me at conferences. And otherwise, my email is on my website. You can always just send me an email, maybe reference this video or reference my work, and I'll be happy to at least have a conversation and then we can see where that goes.
Awesome, awesome. That's
I
great.
would love that, actually.
Great, great. Thank you so much for, all your, sharing all this information. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. I'm sure I will. You've set a great tone for it.
Thank you. Thank you.